These stories may seem ripped from today's headlines, but they're not. This is Germany in the months and years following World War II. For decades, little was known about this post-war period, the Nazi resistance movement, and the guerrilla fighters who tried to resurrect the Third Reich. Until now. On the night of August 9th, 1946, 15 months after Germany surrendered to Allied forces, a powerful bomb blast rocks a local church run by a noted anti-Nazi priest. A month later, the U.S. constabulary post is stoned. Then a grenade attack targets a U.S. soldier. Across the city, swastikas and posters spring up declaring that the Nuremberg trial verdicts are not justice, but homicide. Throughout Germany, groups of Nazi loyalists plot to overthrow the occupation forces. In Stuttgart, one underground band of resistors is led by 23-year-old former SS soldier Siegfried Kabus.
Kabus and the young guys around him, they were kind of desperados. They didn't find their place in the new society. And so they tried to find their place by attacking the Allied forces.
In October 1946, Kabus and his gang step up their attacks by targeting several Spruchkammern buildings, like this one. Sites of the increasingly unpopular Allied-sponsored denazification trials.
It was really regarded as a major provocation directed against the Allied occupation forces, and it was also directed against the process of denazification.
Newspapers began comparing the bombings with those in the late 1920s that helped pave the way for the rise of the Nazi Party. A series of raids and house-to-house searches results in the arrest of 70 individuals, but not the bombers. German and American investigators desperately want to find the mysterious attackers. Who are they? What do they want? And most of all, how can they be stopped before more people rally behind their cause? The origins of the Nazi resistance movement began during the final months of the war, when the German leadership desperately sought any way to prevent their inevitable defeat. In September 1944, the political and military situation in Germany looked bleak. Allied and Soviet forces were steadily advancing. It seemed only a matter of time before they would be on German soil. The survival of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party and its celebrated 1,000-year Third Reich was in serious jeopardy. In a final, desperate strategy to bolster his beleaguered conventional forces, German SS commander Heinrich Himmler ordered the formation of a guerrilla fighting force. Its purpose was to assist the army by infiltrating behind Western Allied and Soviet front lines. Then, like human U-boats, they would attack supply lines, fuel depots, and other targets of opportunity.
What they would do is they would slow the enemy advance up. And as they slowed the enemy advance up, this would give Germany time to pursue other kinds of options. Germany would have time to negotiate with the Allies. Germany would have time to develop its wonder weapons. They might not actually win the war anymore, but they might come out with a relatively even settlement at the end of the war.
Himmler assigned command of this new secret force to SS General Hans Preutzmann. His background, fighting Soviet partisans along Germany's Eastern Front, made him the perfect candidate.
Preutzmann was a pretty brutal character. He'd actually been SS police commander in Ukraine and South Russia. On top of that, During their German retreat from Russia, the Germans had tried to set up some settler colonies made up of ethnic Germans who were supposed to defend the frontier against the Russians. He had played a role in that. One of those settlements, incidentally, was called Werwolf, codenamed Werwolf.
Werewolf was also the code name Kreutzmann gave to his new command of Nazi guerrillas. For Germans living in the 1940s, the name werewolf had a powerful resonance.
Der Werwolf ist eine sehr alte.
The werewolf is a mythological beast from the Middle Ages who would come at night into people's homes to kill them. In addition to that, Adolf Hitler favored the word wolf. His dog was named Wolf. The wolf was a magic word to him, and the werewolf was a symbol from earlier times that would serve to haunt the enemies.
To keep the werewolf organization functioning during any communications disruption with Berlin, Kreutzmann decentralized command in favor of more independent, regionally controlled groups. Across Germany, local Nazi and police units attracted recruits with promises of an exciting new mission, SS rank, and an increased salary. It's estimated that up to 5,000 werewolves eventually enlisted. They consisted largely of discharged older soldiers, non-essential industrial workers, and especially Hitler Youth.
There was an assumption in 1945 that Hitler Youth were the true Nazis, that they'd grown up under the Third Reich. They were fully imbued with the ideology, that they would fight fanatically.
Erich Lost was 18 years old and a captain in the Hitler Youth. In 1945, he enthusiastically joined the Nazi guerrilla werewolves. Today, he is one of the few surviving members.
They
were telling us there was this wonder weapon, and they were not quite done with it, but we had to wait a while for it. I believed this.
In an unusual policy for the times, the werewolves also accepted women. They accounted for up to 15% of the recruits. Because of their secretive nature, werewolf groups often trained in remote locations, such as at this large fortress in the Rhineland. Training consisted of a shortened version given to the typical infantrymen, including orienteering, marching, and riflery.
We had what infantrymen had for that time. We had a machine gun, a Panzerfaust, and we also had mines, so we could blow things up.
Recruits received extensive lessons in espionage and sabotage methods.
They would show werewolves how to use this by blowing up tree stumps and things like that, and by giving them hands-on training in how to use these explosives. And then these troops were expected to use these explosives in much more aggressive fashion once they'd been deployed behind Allied lines.
During this part of the training, many werewolves became disenchanted. Fighting behind enemy lines while wearing civilian clothes was illegal under the international rules of military engagement. If they were caught, they could be shot. But for true believers in the Nazi cause, nothing would stand in their way, as the Allies were about to find out in the first German city they would occupy. When the Allies pushed into Germany beginning in the fall of 1944, the Nazi guerrilla resistance force launched desperate, unconventional attacks. Werewolf teams of up to 6 people infiltrated behind enemy lines by traveling through forests at night. They often buried themselves in pre-built bunkers, allowing enemy troops to bypass their position. When the coast was clear, they would emerge to conduct ambushes.
It was planned that the Americans would come over our way, and we would not be detected. And then we would be able to stop them by killing them, creating confusion, cutting off their supplies, shooting them in the cover of night.
Sniping, wire cutting, and small explosives caused the most havoc. Another effective tactic involved the use of landmines.
The Allies would oftentimes not check the roads that they were already rolling along because they'd already been checked for mines. So if someone came out from the woods and put a mine under a road, then that could prove to be a real problem for the Allies. A vehicle could run over it and have an explosion.
Werewolves were also given orders to kill anyone collaborating with the Allies. It's believed they murdered scores, if not hundreds of civilians by the war's end. One of their most successful operations occurred in Aachen, a city located along Germany's western border with Holland and Belgium. The American forces captured Aachen on October 21st, 1944. It would be the first German city to be occupied. The Americans immediately recruited non-Nazis to form a new local administration and to restart essential services to the city's remaining residents. This new German provisional government became a symbolic success for the Allies and a major embarrassment to the Nazi leaders in Berlin.
It was devastating for them. The German government called the new regime of Aachen traitors. And Joseph Goebbels said upon their return, they will hang the traitors on every tree in Aachen.
Heinrich Himmler ordered his werewolf guerrillas to assassinate the new mayor. He intended this to be a clear message to any other potential collaborators. In March 1945, 2 months before Germany surrendered, a 5-man, 1-woman team parachuted behind the Allied lines into Belgium. They then crossed overland towards Aachen, killing a border guard in the process. Late the next evening, they finally arrived here, at the home of Aachen's new mayor, Franz Oppenhoff.
Das hier ist die Mordstelle von Oberbürgermeister Oppenhoff.
SS soldiers came to Oppenhoff's house, knocked on the door, and the maid opened. They claimed to be crashed German pilots and asked for some food. The maid went into the house, called the mayor, and was told by him to prepare some sandwiches for them. The mayor then went to the door by himself to greet the pilots, when one soldier, kneeling down, shot him in the left side of the head.
Oppenhoff's murder was a major propaganda victory for the Nazis.
A replacement was hard to find, since everybody thought he would be killed after being elected as the mayor. Everybody was frightened by the thought. All 5,000 people in the city.
In the weeks following Oppenhoff's murder, 6 other small town mayors were assassinated. The werewolves were no longer a Nazi secret. Instead, their newfound mystique was making headlines across Germany and in the United States. The murderous reprisals by Nazi guerrillas proved to be only the first indication of the violent final days of the Third Reich. The brutal Nazi regime would stop at nothing to ensure its long-term survival. In Berlin, Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels railed against those Germans he felt were not doing enough to protect the Third Reich. In an effort to rally the people, Goebbels brought to the airwaves on April 1st, 1945, a novel new program, Radio Werewolf. For 1 hour each night, announcers urged every German to take up arms against the enemy. They read aloud instructions in how to use weapons such as the Panzerfaust, a type of rocket-propelled grenade strong enough to knock out a tank. Goebbels also used Radio Werewolf to announce the names of the civilians that had been killed for collaborating with the enemy.
It was meant to intimidate people and make them aware of the fact that Nazi justice had a long arm and